enjoyed Christmas. Welcome to my bottom 10 films list of 2013. Okay, before we get started, I want to point out that not only is this just my opinion, but much more importantly, I'm not an out-and-out film reviewer. I maybe see about 40 films a year, which I think is a lot more than the average person, but that doesn't even come close to what real film reviewers see, which is probably more like 300 or 400 films in a year. So most of the worst films of the year won't actually get anywhere near my list because I didn't even go and see them in the first place, and I thought it's only fair if I pick from films that I've actually seen. So I've listed all the films that I went to see in the cinema in the description below, so you can see what kind of pool of films I'm actually drawing on to make this list here. Perhaps you'd like to leave me a comment to point out any terrible films I've missed, anything I was lucky enough not to see that you'd definitely have in your bottom 10 list of films for the year. Anyway, let's get started. So, number 10, World War Z. It's been a while since I've seen this kind of film, you know, where you've got zombies or things that appear to be similar to zombies running around. I was able to look forward to it, and it wasn't terrible. I mean, as I say, I vetted out most of the really, really bad films by actually not going to see them, so it does seem a bit harsher on World War Z, and there were things I liked about it. The first problem I had with it, though, was at the beginning, well, it just felt like I was watching the trailer again. There was too much of it that had already been seen in the trailer, so I didn't feel like I was getting anything new for the first 20 minutes or so of the film. I also found the pacing quite uneven. There were some great scenes, but they were just too far apart, and in between you felt like, okay, yeah, so when's it going to get going again? Peter Capaldi's appearance was certainly a positive. Could have done with more of him. Anyway, had the ending not been so unsatisfying, it was basically oh yes, a solution exists, okay, job done. I'd probably have enjoyed it a lot more. Number 9, Trance. This film had a memorable style and tone to it, but the revelation towards the end, that leaves you questioning everything you've seen up to that point. It makes you forget it just as quickly, because the film is basically telling you to dismiss everything you've seen, which made much of the plot and the dialogue quite forgettable, and nor did it leave me with much motivation to go and see it again. I wasn't too keen on the performances by any of the lead actors, and ultimately I didn't really feel any reason to care about any of the characters. Number 8, R.I.P.D. It really, really is Men in Black meets Beetlejuice, or Ghostbusters, Ghost, or all three perhaps. And it passed the time okay, and I was never bored by it, but ultimately I don't think I'll ever need to watch it again. It wasn't that satisfying. I wouldn't say I hate it, but then I don't know the comic book material. I have no idea how much the film violated that or not. I will say one positive thing about it though. It was good to see Jeff Bridges bring back his performance from True Grit. It was great to be able to see him do that again. Number 7, The Smurfs 2. Well, even Hank Azaria couldn't save this one with his very dependable pantomime villain, Gargamel. The plot was lazy, and the rest of the cast performance is rather perfunctory. There seemed to be some underlying moral about the importance of family, but I can't remember it very well. Number 6, The Incredible Burt Wonderstone. I discovered this by chance, so I went to see it, all excited about a comedy about magicians. I've seen a few in the past and enjoyed them always to some extent. I just couldn't get on with this film. It's far too cheesy in some places, and the magic was disappointing. I'd like to have seen something that could only really be created with the tools of cinema, and would willingly have suspended my disbelief for that. Where I couldn't suspend my disbelief was Jim Carrey and his self-harm antics, and everyone around him buying it as magic rather than getting him urgent help with his clear mental health problems. For his first few scenes I wanted to believe that all his stunts were very clever illusions, but when it became clear the film wasn't portraying him that way, it just lost all credibility for me. Alan Arkin was decent though, I'll give it that. Number 5, Oblivion. Well, all I can say about this is what a waste. I mean, once the main twist of the film was revealed, it's just about watching it head towards an inevitable conclusion, with far, far too much time left in the film at that point. The trailer got me really excited, intrigue, drama, lots of characters and a mystery, and what we got was a very simple one-dimensional story with a partial twist revealed far too early. Number 4, Man of Steel. I'm not the biggest fan of origin stories about well-established characters, But if they're done in a new and interesting way, covering details previously not looked at in film, like Batman Begins did, then I will enjoy them. Basically, if I learn something new, then I'm happy. Man of Steel didn't do that at all. It just told the same origin story that we've already seen, with one minor change: the manner of the death of Mr. Kent. A change that I felt was actually a detriment to the film anyway. I couldn't buy the idea that Clark would allow his father to die just because his father told him to. It doesn't add up for me, and as an origin story for Superman, I'd love to have seen the revelation of the real mystery to me, which is how did a couple of well-meaning but mortal human parents bring up a confused, lonely and emotionally struggling child with a good moral values and the self-discipline and will as a teenager not to use his abilities. I mean, never mind the school bullying situation that was in the film, what about even ordinary everyday outbursts of anger? I mean, take Looper as the model of how Superman's childhood should have been. That would have been great, and we just didn't get that at all, or anything else that might have been different and interesting. There are other problems with the film as well. I mean, the problems already discussed by many Superman fans about how many deaths he contributes to in the climax of the film, and people focusing on his resolution of the moral dilemma by killing Zod and forgetting all the people in those buildings that he and Zod destroy first. There's also the ludicrous creationist propaganda. I mean, when Zod's lieutenant, she's not called Ursa in this one, it's Feora or something, I can't remember. When she misrepresents evolution, I found myself thinking, okay, great, when Superman defeats her, he can explain how morality is a product of evolution, and she was beaten because evolution always wins, and she just didn't understand it. But no, it's just left as a representation of evolution being defeated, and that left me fuming. The moment I knew I wasn't fully immersed in the film, though, actually came away before that, when Perry White, a newspaper editor, says something to Lois that's basically about serving the interests of other people. I mean, when has a newspaper editor ever cared about other people's lives other than how he or she can exploit them to sell copies and advertising space? Oh well, let's call it a utopian world like the one they have in Star Trek, except it only applies to newspapers. Whatever. Moving on. Number 3. The Place Beyond the Pines. Apparently lots of people really like this film. That's fine, but let me tell you why I didn't. The film is supposed to be a multi-generational saga covering several different lives loosely connected by coincidence, with the only real constant being the area where they all live, and taking the opportunity to get some really good photography of the landscape for the film. The photography I'll give them credit for. It does look good. My problem is the plot and how it just doesn't give enough focus to any one character before moving away and onto something new. And then to make things worse, by giving partial focus on 3 different main characters in the story, you get 3 incomplete stories about characters that add up to a very long film. So the film attempts to be epic, covering long arcs that overlap by coincidence, but really it only succeeds in being long, and the links between the characters are so tenuous, because instead of seeing a continuation of the story from a new point of view, you're just seeing an abrupt cut-off of one story and being force-fed a different one instead when you really don't want it yet. I've never ever walked out of a film early, but I nearly did this time. I only stayed to the end because at the time I considered leaving, I was thinking, well, there's probably only another 10 minutes to go or so. I was wrong, there was another half hour. Number 2. Blue Jasmine. Okay, first of all, I need to emphasise something here. This film in many ways is really, really well made. It's brilliantly directed. Okay, with very well written dialogue, and if Cate Blanchett gets an Oscar, then it'll be fully deserved. The rest of the cast give very strong performances too, and yet despite all of that, it's found its way to number 2 in the list of films I enjoyed the least this year. And that's basically because of the premise behind it. It's about a stuck-up cow who's having to eat humble pie when she becomes dependent on her less wealthy relatives, whom she treated like dirt in the past, but now she's seen her own life go tits up, she's come crawling back to them basically to try and sort herself out with their help. So the whole thing seems to be an apology from Woody Allen on behalf of all rich people, such as himself, to the working class, and it's just so full of bitterness. He set up this rich character to be hated, but the problem is that very few of the other characters, I only counted 1 at the time, come out of it with any dignity. That would be the ex-brother-in-law of the main character, who has his money cheated out of him, but managed to remain relatively calm and dignified while everyone else was committing adultery and getting violent and all kinds of crazy stuff going on in the film. But as a measure of how disengaged from the film I was, I actually thought to notice that while the film's chiefly about 2 sisters, it struggles to pass the Bechdel test. Now, if you don't know what that is, it's this criterion that any film can be measured by, to see if it includes two female characters talking to each other for at least 30 seconds about something other than the man. And yet this film doesn't do that, or if it does, it only just does it, and I couldn't be 100% sure if it did, which is pretty bad. So yeah, it's a shame. I really hope one day I'll see a Woody Allen film I actually like. And I was very hesitant about putting a film that's technically so well made on the top of this list. I'm sure loads of people love it. Fortunately, something else came along to take the number one spot at least. And the number one film on this list is number one, The Counsellor. I think most people will probably agree on this one, if they saw it, that is. I didn't go in completely unprepared. I'd already heard that the film had some very negative reviews, and I saw what Mark Kermode had to say about it. I thought I'd better see it anyway. I mean, Cormac McCarthy, Ridley Scott, Javier Bardem, loads of big names in the cast. I mean, there'd have to be something good in it, and okay, I suppose there was something. The photography, I'll give it that. The photography was great. Visually looked nice, okay, I enjoyed that aspect. But that was about it. I mean, McCarthy had gone out all out to be poetic and given us some great monologues about the human condition, but unfortunately, even if you find all of his quirky lines about crossroads and grief and truth having no temperature to your taste, ultimately there's no escaping that in going all out to give us poetry, McCarthy's forgotten to give us any drama at all. There's no reason to care about the characters, not least of all because they come across as very stupid. Even the ones who are portrayed to know what's going on are still hanging around waiting to be killed instead of sodding off out of the country while they still can, purely for the purpose of giving more of McCarthy's stylish lines. It's just set up for that rather than to tell a sensible story. But what really struck out most for me was the way the film was built on one little piece of irony, that the main character is known as a counsellor, but he spends the whole film asking other people for advice. Yeah, it was amusing for the first couple of scenes, but after that it quickly got tired and then irritating. Yes, I get it. He's a counsellor. Ha ha, but he's getting all the advice of other people. Hilarious. Anyway, that's the list. I hope you enjoyed it. My top 10 list of the films that I enjoyed the most. That will be available to watch around the same time tomorrow. Well done for making it to the end. And leave me a comment telling me what your list would be. Tell me how many films you saw in 2013, what you're looking forward to in the new year. I want to do some more reviews from now on, so if you think that's a good idea, let me know. And if you can think of other ways I might want to expand the scope of my channel, yeah, stick it all down there. Tell me everything. Okay, great. And of course, you can find me on Twitter if you want.